What's going on, government class? Welcome back. It is Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. We got a little bit on the old to-do list today. If we go ahead and take a look, most are announcements, but as always, we're going to start off with a little 5-minute review. Then we are going to talk today about the history of political parties. If you recall, we started talking about political parties a couple classes ago. Last class, we started talking about specifics on what each party believes today. And then today, we're going to start talking about the political parties and the history, how they kind of developed through time. After that, I'll give you your assignment and your attendance question for today. And while I got you here, number 4 and 5, very important. Number 4, vocabulary quiz next week. Next week, you will have a vocab quiz, most likely on Thursday. We got a Tuesday, Thursday set up next week. So most likely on Thursday, you will have a vocab quiz on the vocab that we did back on January 4th, 5th, 6th. Early on in January, we did some vocab. That will be a quiz, so study up for that puppy. Same as it has been, about 12, 15 questions, multiple choice, fill in the blank kind of deal. Final, 5th notification here. We got weekly review quiz next class. On Friday, you will have a weekly review quiz. I don't even think we've had one yet in January. So very important that we get this weekly review quiz in. Everything's going to be fair game. I'm talking about political processes, voting, parties, all this stuff. Citizenship was a big one. The jus soli and jus sanguinis, naturalization, all that stuff will definitely be on your quiz next class. But for today, let's go ahead, get to our 5-minute review on our history of political parties. Now, since we're talking about jus sanguinis and jus soli, I figured let's go old school style here. And let's do a 5-minute review where I just ask questions. We don't need a straight PowerPoint presentation. I'm not going to call out too many names. I'm just going to ask some questions that you might find on this next class's weekly review quiz. Number 1, there are 3 ways how you can become a citizen. What are the 3 ways? I'm looking for anybody. Yes, you in the back with your hand up. We've got jus soli, which means being born here, remember, by the soil. Jus sanguinis, by blood. If your parents or grandparents have citizenship, you can apply for it. You can be a citizen. And number 3, naturalization. What is naturalization? That is a good question. Naturalization is the way immigrants become citizens of the United States. Now, we said that there were 5 steps of their, 5 steps. There were 5 requirements of the naturalization process. What are they? Anybody? Does anybody know? Do you remember? Number 1, a period of continuous residence in the United States. I mean, you have to be living here for a while, and you have to have entered legally. Number 2, proficiency in English. That means you have to do 3 things. What are they? Read, write, speak. Those are the 3 things you have to do to be proficient in English. Number 3, you have to pay a fee. You have to pay a fee and declare support for the principles of American government. Number 4, good moral character. You have to be a good human being. You can't be El Chapo. We're not letting him in anytime soon. He's not a good guy. Pretty poor character. And number 5, you have to show basic knowledge of what? American history and American government. And you do so by taking a test. That is 10 questions. They give you 100 to study. You got to get at least 6 out of 10 right. You and one other person. Don't forget that. You guys also have to take that test. But you have to take all 100 questions to pass the old civics exam. All right. Now, once you are a citizen, there are some civic responsibilities. If you have good civic virtue, that means you do all of these things. There are a few that are required by law. Those are jury duty. Yes, jury duty is one. You must serve on a jury if you are summoned. Number 2, it's about that time to pay taxes. You have to pay your taxes. That is something that is required by law. Number 3, speaking of laws, you must obey the law. You got to obey the law. That is something that is required by law. Yep, and a good civic duty. And the 4th one, for all the fellas, once you turn 18, you have to register for the selective services. Now, things that you don't have to do by law, but still make a good citizen, make you a virtuous citizen, good civic virtue, that would be voting. Not required by law. It is in some countries, not here, but voting is something that makes you a good citizen. To vote, you should be informed on the issues. That is not required by law, but you should be. And then, of course, volunteering in your community. Those are all things that a good citizen does. Now, we've talked about a political party. A political party does a few things. What do? You should know the 4 things we talked about that a political party does. It has to do with nominating, winning, controlling, and influencing. Go back and watch a video if you don't remember those. That's very important. One-party systems, two-party systems, and multi-party systems. What do we have in the U.S.? A two-party system. You normally find one-party systems where there are dictators. A third party is also known as a minor party, and they contribute because they talk about unpopular ideas, they steal votes from candidates, they force candidates to talk about things that they don't want to talk about. And then finally, we move on to George Washington and his farewell address. He said we shouldn't do what? We shouldn't have political parties. But do we? Yes, we do. And here we are. That leads us to today, a history of political parties. So, what you need to do, if you have not seen your email already, I emailed you today a note sheet. You are going to be taking notes along with me today. You're going to fill those puppies in as we go along. Go check your email right now. Hit pause if you need to. You're going to grab that, download it, do whatever you need to do, copy it, write it out. I don't know. But pause will be waiting for you when you get back, and then we will go ahead and start our history of U.S. political parties notes. So what you guys are looking at here is the attachment I sent you in your email this morning, and really what it is just a brief history on political parties in the United States. Now, we start back with this guy, George Washington, our first president, and we have this question, why does this man look so upset? Well, if you recall, when George Washington left office after 8 years of being the president, 2 terms, he gave a farewell address, and he gave us some advice. And amongst other things, he told us, do not have political parties. They are very bad. They are very toxic. You will have people hating each other and not talking to each other just based on party alone. And of course, in our infinite wisdom, we decided not to listen to George Washington, come up with political parties anyway, and now we don't talk to each other and we hate each other based on party alone. However, that does not stop us from having to understand where political parties really came from and how they came about in our American history. And the first 2 political parties are probably 2 that you know that you didn't know you knew. We talk about the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists a couple units ago. Those were actually our first 2 political parties. The people who wanted the Constitution to be ratified and the people that did not want it to be ratified. The Anti-Federalists said, hey, we do not want this Constitution ratified without a Bill of Rights. And these were really the first 2 parties. So right here, we're going to just do a quick review. Obviously, the Federalists, our main guy, the leader of that party, was Alexander Hamilton. And this party wanted a strong national government. They did not want the states to have a lot of power. They wanted the country to have a lot of power. Furthermore, the Federalists wanted a strong president or a strong executive branch. And if you recall also, these people that were Federalists, they were more of the white-collar workers. They had financial interests. They were the manufacturing type of people. And we'll add commercial interests. So they were into selling things, making that money. On the other side, the Anti-Federalists were more of your working type man, your blue-collar men and women, and their leader was Thomas Jefferson. And of course, they wanted a limited national government where they didn't have the power to do all these things and that the state governments would have a lot more power. They did not want a strong executive. They wanted a strong legislative branch or Congress. And these people, like I said, were the blue-collar workers, the farmers, the laborers. It would help if I spelled that word correctly. We can even say the planters and the small shopkeepers. Now, what happens? In 1796, John Adams gets elected. And for as great of a man as he was and the things that he helped do, he wasn't very popular. And in fact, in notes with a pencil right here, you can put, he loses power quickly. Because if we take a look right over here, 4 years later, after one term, Thomas Jefferson gets elected as president. And he becomes president. And really, the Anti-Federalists dominate for 20 years. And we can put that right here. Dominate for 20 years. It's all Anti-Federalist all the time. However, in 1820, this Anti-Federalist party splits into two. It splits into the National Republican Party, known as the Whig Party, and also the Democratic Party, but the Jacksonian Democrats. This is going to be much different from the Democrats and the Republicans that you know of today. Back in the 1820s, which is now 200 years ago, the leaders of this Whig Party were Henry Clay and Daniel Webster. These two names aren't really that important. They won't be on any quizzes or any tests, but this is just something to reference later on. And again, these were the financial people. They were the coalition of Eastern bankers. They were also merchants and industrialists, meaning they were big into industry, creating things, making a lot of money that way. On the other side, you had the Jacksonian Democrats, named for Andrew Jackson, who was a president, and also on the $20 bill. Not a lot of people know that one. If you got a 20, take it out. Andrew Jackson, he was a president, I believe our 7th president, and he was a Democrat, but not in the same way that, the Democrats are today. So let's put his name down first. Andrew Jackson was the president, the leader of this party, and these guys, you can think of them the same way you thought of the Anti-Federalists. Again, they were small farmers. They were frontier pioneers, meaning they would go out west towards where we are now in Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, and try to find new land and take over that land. President Andrew Jackson is not so very well remembered for something called the Trail of Tears, where they forced and removed a bunch of Native Americans out of their property, killing a bunch and taking that land and pushing them from their homes. So we don't look back on him very fondly, but he is still memorialized on our $20 bill. But these are the two parties in the 1820s, the Republican Whig Party and the Jacksonian Democrats. Right here we see in the 1850s, the Whig Party fizzles out. It just doesn't gain any more popularity, and it turns into a new party. They lose the Whig, and they just become the Republican Party. And the Republican Party is led by someone very famous who is possibly most remembered for freeing slaves. Yep, President Abraham Lincoln. And this takes place in 1860. Many people join this Republican Party because it's a very liberal party. It's people that want to make change, to get rid of slavery. They are former Whigs and anti-slavery Democrats. Because back in the day, the Democratic Party, as we see over here, it splits over slavery. Some people in the Democratic Party wanted slaves and thought it was good. Other people did not. Those who thought it was not came over to this Republican Party. Also, these type of people were what we call unionists. They cared about the United States of America as a union, wanted to keep it together. But still, as you can see the trend on this side here, they were the business and financially interested people. They had business and financial interests. Over here, the party that they were going up against, that Democratic Party, they did not have a lot of power. In fact, they didn't have much power until 1932. Most of the people were liberal and wanted change, and that's what this Republican Party offered. Surprisingly enough, today the Republican Party is the complete opposite. The Republican Party is conservative. They are socially conservative, they are economically conservative, and the Democratic Party actually is the more liberal of the two. So back to this Democratic Party, they stay out of power until 1932, when a man named FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, becomes president. And he goes on to win 4 elections. And he's the only president to be elected more than twice. And after he's president, they actually create an amendment to the Constitution. We know how to do that. We know how hard that is. But they say you can only be president 2 times. You can only win 2 terms. But FDR was so popular, obviously, that this Democratic Party stays in power for quite a while, from 1930, and they are strong in the South especially until the 1960s. And in the 1960s, this is where we see a switch in these 2 parties. First of all, let's finish this up. This type of party, as you can tell, from the Anti-Federalists to the Democrats that were Jacksonian Democrats, these were, again, the blue-collar workers, the labor type of people, and the new immigrants that are coming over from other countries across the ocean just to have a free life. They're all part of this party. But it's right around the 1960s where we have the civil rights movement, where the Democratic Party becomes a lot more liberal, and the Republican Party becomes a lot more conservative. And that's very important to know today, because today the Republican Party, as I said, is much more conservative, and the Democratic Party is much more liberal. They almost flip-flopped back around this time. You'll hear a lot of people argue different things, and it's very important that you know that the Republican Party used to be liberal, and the Democratic Party used to be conservative, and now, in fact, they are the complete opposite. All right, that does it for your notes today. Make sure that if you typed them, you save this. If you wrote them out, you take a picture, and we will move on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That is a brief history of political parties in the United States. Obviously, as I said, those are the 2 kind of major parties throughout the United States history. We've had plenty of third parties, Green Party, Libertarian Party, Tea Party, all these different parties throughout the years that have been minor or third parties. That is a brief history of the 2 major political parties that have been dominating since, we created this government. Now, next class, we are going to talk about what makes someone liberal and what makes someone conservative and what makes someone maybe a Republican and maybe a Democrat or maybe a moderate who is in the middle, maybe somebody who's independent of a political party. And then next week, you guys are going to kind of get to take a little survey and figure out what you are, if you are more liberal or more conservative. It's a pretty fun little activity where you start to learn a little bit about yourself and where you stand and what party you might be a part of. But for now, today's assignment and attendance question, I got to get that to you. Very simple. Send me a picture of the notes that we just completed, all right? Complete those notes, send them to me, take a screenshot, take a picture of what you wrote out on paper. Doesn't matter as long as you have those notes completed, 100% completed for a grade. That is your assignment and your attendance question. Email it to me. If you have any questions, I am here to help you out. If not, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Don't forget, Friday, weekly review quiz. That is next class, weekly review quiz. Study up on those citizenship notes and the book work we did where you guys had to do some reading and answer some questions. Maybe even, might be a question about the day that we had last week where there was a new person taking over. Current event stuff might be on your weekly review quiz. I don't know. I do. It's going to be on there. You might want to study that. But you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll see you on Friday. Take care.